Hi, and welcome to the Scan Pro Video podcast. Today, we're joined by Allan from NVIDIA and Brett Danton, Director and DOP. And today, we're going to have a look at NVIDIA's new platform, Omniverse. Thanks for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it. I know it's a little bit much to take time out of your day, so really thankful for that. If you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to yourselves, that'd be great.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a director and director of photography. Started as a stills photographer many years ago, shooting on film. Worked my way through things like 5.4 and 10.8 film. A lot of lighting, and then slowly moved into director of photography, and now directing, but probably more with a bias towards director of photography. So, and visual images, and been lucky enough to work in the last probably year with the pre-releases on Omniverse on a couple of really interesting projects, and one of them featured in GTC Keynote.
Fantastic. And how about yourself, Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. It's great to be here today with Scan and Brett. I look after the media and entertainment industry for NVIDIA's enterprise organization for the EMEA region. Work very closely with people like Brett, who do some really helpful work in testing early access to NVIDIA technologies. I also look after all of our larger broadcast customers, our partners in the ISV space, post-production visual effects houses, and marketing and advertising agencies. I'm really excited to be here today and talk a bit about what Brett's been able to achieve with Omniverse in the last year.
That's quite a lot to cover, Jamie. That's I don't know how you find the time. Oh. I
try.
Awesome. So recently, Brett, I believe you got hands-on with one of our 3XS workstations and NVIDIA Omniverse. I was hoping you might be able to just give us a little bit of insight into what that experience was like, how you got started with it, and how you found it.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest with you, I was completely thrown at the deep end. I'd never really used any 3D software at all. I mean, I'd looked at it, obviously we'd seen it from a post side of stuff, and myself never using it. And I got thrown into it by a gentleman called Perry Nightingale from WPP, and he said, look, let's give this a go. So, I was lucky enough to have all the latest equipment. I've got a Your XS workstation here. It's running two RTX 8000 cards in it. And for me, obviously I've seen a lot of stuff that sits here working inside a 3D world, but it never looks photorealistic. And what we set about trying to achieve was something that looked photorealistic. And to actually be able to go from a real dimension into a 3D dimension and keep the lighting and everything exactly the same. And because of my background in stills photography and lighting scenes, I've got an understanding of that. What Omniverse gave me, and I could see it straight away as soon as I started rendering stuff, was the lighting in it and the way it works inside a path tracing environment. It looks like the real thing. I mean, I drop in a light, and I move it around inside a scene, and it's the way I'd expect it to work in the real world. And that was the thing that literally started to blow my mind. I mean, the reflections. I could actually pretend I was back in the studio, and I could actually start to do things that I've never done before that I always wanted to do in terms of lighting. And I could see, where this was heading, and obviously we're still pushing on with it. And now next year we've got quite a few projects planned with it because of the quality of the rendering.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. The ability to set up all of these lights that you might not have access to, whether that's a budget thing or a space restriction, suddenly, being able to just drop them into a scene and light it exactly how you want without these things as a consideration is incredibly powerful. Now, you mentioned working with a 3XS system there, and one of the things you brought up was that it has two RTX 8000 GPU cards in it. So I was wondering if we might be able to get a bit of an insight from yourself, Jamie, about the sort of system requirements we're looking at when we look at Omniverse.
Absolutely. So, Omniverse is a powerful multi-GPU real-time simulation and collaboration platform. For the application performance itself, it scales very well. So depending on how complex the work is that you're doing, depending on how you have the rendering settings set up for your visualization, we can scale right down to laptops running with RTX 5000s and this sort of GPU. If you want to be really pushing the boundaries, like single workstations with dual A6000s or RTX 8000s like Brett has, will really give you the best performance. The idea of this rendering engine is to scale as big as you need it to go, within however you want to set those boundaries, given the rendering settings and the samples per pixel that you set up within the renderer itself. It's incredibly flexible in this regards. It's designed to run on any hardware containing NVIDIA RTX GPUs. So we can run up to 8 GPU servers. We can go in the future potentially with software updates to multi-GPU nodes, and then obviously into the cloud as well. We'll be able to scale in the future to native cloud deployments. But for Omniverse Enterprise that we're releasing first this year, it will be multi-GPU workstations, multi-GPU servers for rendering, down to laptops with powerful NVIDIA RTX technology.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. I mean, you can be working with Omniverse, anywhere really if it scales all the way down to a laptop. I mean, we'd all love to have a workstation out in the field with us all the time, but it's just not always viable, is it? But yeah, so another thing that sort of touched on a little bit is virtual production as a whole. And it's not just limited to the stage, is it? Omniverse can be used a lot in previs, am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, we used it. I mean, it's sort of not, I think that the saying's probably changed a little bit now in my world. It always used to be fix it in post, and now it's fix it in pre. So, we've kind of swapped it around, and it's opened up a whole new way of doing stuff where we're putting a lot of planning into the pre-production, and we're pre-vising. And what I really enjoyed working inside this environment was that I got a virtual set sent to me that we had built, and as a director and a DP, I could drop an asset in which happened to be a car, and I could actually move around that set and mark out and block out shots and render out the shots as I actually saw we were going to use them inside the commercial. Now, there's two ways. You could do that as a lower resolution, that might be as a pre-visualization, or what we actually ended up doing is, and as Jamie said, we're pushing it using the cards. We're actually rendering out full 4K HDR finishes that went to grading, and suddenly I've got something that's sitting in a full Rec 2020 full HDR color space in 4K that you cannot tell the difference between what has been rendered inside Omniverse and the real location. And I know that because we went and scanned in a real location to build the virtual set.
Yeah,
and I think this is where you start to see the power of building Omniverse on Pixar's universal scene description as well. The goals of the platform is to create an interoperability between ecosystems, 3D vendors, and applications, right? So in that world of previs and supporting the virtual production pipeline, being able to really quickly bring in assets and do reviews and package up content and send it between vendors and studios and partners is an incredibly powerful thing that means that people can keep using the tools that they want to use, whether that be a volumetric capturing tool or a 3D DCC tool like Maya or Blender, and be able to bring those assets together really quickly. So someone like Brett can get a visual representation in minutes rather than potentially hours or days to get high quality renders out. So it's these sort of new capabilities that we're really trying to enable with Omniverse for people like Brett and that whole ecosystem of production around him.
And also as well, the other thing with that was I'd never really touched the software, and other packages I've opened up before, I've just sort of fallen over as soon as I've opened them up. Whereas because it's sitting in top of it, it's the way the file structures are. It was really simple for me to start using it straight away, and it's non-destructive on the way through as well. So, I could literally start to walk around that set with very little knowledge, which is really good.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be sort of lead me into my next point, which was you mentioned that you've not, before Omniverse, you weren't very hands-on with 3D applications, but by the sounds of it, it was really easy to get up and running with it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I tried to, I really wanted to teach myself some other 3D applications, and I literally sat there and opened up some of them and thought I'll do some of the online courses, and within inside about an hour went, well, this is going to take about 3 years, so I'm not going to do this because, it's impossible. But yes, and something like Omniverse, the thing is with it's a very different approach because, as Jamie said, you're using, stuff from lots of different sources. So I might not necessarily have to build it, but what I can do is I can move around it and I can drop in the lighting and I can do all the stuff I need to do as a filmmaker. So it puts it inside my hands, inside an easy to use interface.
Yeah, and I think that's, that collaborative workflow is becoming more and more important as we move forward, especially over the last, 2 years where everyone's been working remotely. The ability to just send assets, drop them all into a scene, and be able to block your scene without having to, have a set built and bring in people to do it. It seems like such a time saver overall.
And the reuse of the asset as well. I mean, especially with the way things are at the moment, you can take an asset that's been built inside 3D and reuse it and make it look completely different. So you've got all of those abilities.
Yeah. So
we're seeing the asset management side of Omniverse and the collaboration platform being positioned and used already by studios as like a digital hub of scenes and scenarios and sets and stages, right? Where traditionally you might have, loads of backlots on a film set and loads of stores of different, stages and props and things. We're seeing the digitalization of that, where companies can give access to their production teams, to their directors, DOPs, this, digital backlot of content to enable people like Brett to pick and choose from sets and then really quickly be able to change the look and feel of those sets through lighting, color, materials, things like that, without having to go out and shoot new content, without having to spend the time and the money to create massive amounts of new assets as an internal sort of repository of assets, which is going to be really powerful, we think, for the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. Being able to build it all without having to go out on set is just something sort of unbeatable. So if I was going to get, like a top 2 or 3 headline points from you, Brett, what would you say Omniverse allows you to do? If we're looking to convert people to Omniverse, what would you say Omniverse allows you to do or gives you the tools to do as a, creative director or a DOP that otherwise might have been more of a challenge?
I mean, certainly pre-visualization is number one. I mean, if I've got handed a set that's a 3D asset and stuff to go onto that set, I can pretty much pre-visualize any of those, any of the shots I want to do and build them, and I can move the cameras. And then on top of that, I can light them the way they really should be lit. And Omniverse will, show that lighting exactly the way it would be in reality. The other thing too, though, is, I mean, I have used other pre-visualization tools, and the thing that's I've always had problems. I've used some other, other things out there. But the problem is I've never been able to get the sets into the, I've always been limited to what you can build inside that application. Whereas Omniverse, I can suck in all these different assets. So, if our set builder builds something, or we scan in a location, I can get all of those things, put them inside of that one thing. So, that's number one. Number two is that, the way to be able to basically light the scene and play around and experiments with lighting. Like I've got a car here in a forest. If I want to drop in 100-foot softbox over the top of it and see what that looks like, that is going to light the way it really would inside a forest. That's probably not doable. Probably wouldn't have the budget for it, but we can actually do that inside of this environment. So, in terms of that, I can suddenly create stuff that I've always wanted to create. And then for me, the other thing that I find really interesting is I can start to do things like the impossible camera move. And we generated a move where we had a camera flying down between trees that popped out on the other side of the road. And you go, well, yeah, that's fine. But that in real life, starting from the sky, coming down between the trees, tracking a car, is virtually impossible. And I could do that at home to cinema level quality on a computer at home. I mean, I find that fairly crazy, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the only sort of limitation is what you can imagine, really.
Yeah, I mean, I did find myself when I first started playing with it a few times waking up during the night going, I've got to go and try that shot. And you get up in the morning and I'm basically planning out shots as if I was out on an actual shoot. And that really is, all the other pieces of software I've ever tried, as I have tried some other previous stuff before, but, none of it has given me this look and this flexibility.
That's fantastic to hear. And one of the things, we've talked, we'd love to be able to have a 100-foot softbox over a forest. We'd love to have, multi-GPU workstations with us wherever we go. We'd love everyone to move on to Omniverse as a platform. But we know that, it takes all different types. Some people will be working with their application that they're used to and they want to continue working with. But we've talked how Omniverse can collaborate. How do we see it fitting into existing workflows? How easy is it for people to transition or to integrate Omniverse as part of their existing workflow?
Well, I mean, we are aiming to make it as easy as possible, right? This is the whole point of bringing a tool into the industry, into multiple industries, really, that is not designed necessarily to replace any of their existing tools. It has to fit in quickly and it has to fit in easily. I think the biggest adoption area that we are supporting and really promoting in lots of different industries is that of USD, the Universal Scene Description that we talked about earlier, right? This way of being able to have a universal open source, it's not really a file format. It's more of it's a database. It's all sorts of things, but to allow us to interchange assets and content and descriptions of a 3D world between lots of different tools, not just ones that Omniverse are working with, right? There are goals for USD to be a cornerstone of what people are starting to figure out the metaverse is going to be in order to bring 3D content to loads of different platforms, right? And Apple are big backers of USD and many other companies. We're making connectors, we're building capabilities to enable the world-leading DCC 3D content tools to connect to Omniverse. There is also a huge framework of development capabilities with Omniverse, where if you have your own applications or you have something you could see that could be done with Omniverse to make it fit even better with your business, you can build those tools. Omniverse is not just a set of applications like the ones that Brett has been using. It's an entire application framework. So you can build using the blocks that we have built our applications with, whatever application you need to create. You can write connectors to connect into the Omniverse platform yourselves using the code samples and the SDKs that we're making available. So onboarding and bringing this capability into any environment, whether it be a previs tool for Brett's sort of workflow, or whether it be designing trainers, or whether it be simulating a whole new factory like the work we're doing at BMW, all these different workflows can be possible in Omniverse. And what we've seen over the last year or two with the early adoption and the testers we've been working with is that when they see the spark of inspiration, like Brett did with the lighting, and like other companies have done with their own reasons why they see Omniverse so important, you get that extra bit of urge in that company to integrate these tools. And they've all found it relatively straightforward, which is surprising when you consider how complex these 3D workflows can be, especially in the visual effects industry.
Yeah, I mean, to me at least, it feels like we're on the cusp of something really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it grows, develops, and integrates. And to be honest, I'm just desperate to get my hands on it and give it a test myself. Speaking of that, how would production houses or post houses or anyone go about getting their hands on Omniverse? How do they go about learning it? How do they go about testing the platform out and migrating across to it, Jamie?
So for individual users, there will always be a free version of Omniverse. So Omniverse for individuals, which is designed for you as a creator or an artist to collaborate on your own workstation between your own applications and enable a huge amount of the power of Omniverse for an individual user. The Omniverse Enterprise platform, which is designed for multi-user collaboration across entire organizations, will be available from key partners for NVIDIA, like Scan, who we've chosen because we know they have an understanding of the markets they address, they have an understanding of the 3D workflows, and how to get into Omniverse. So I'd recommend to anyone who wants to start having a play around, you can download the beta versions or the open trial versions from NVIDIA.com, and then absolutely get in touch with partners like Scan to understand how to deploy, how to properly manage and support the workflows around your business.
That's great. And speaking of the beta version, I believe, Brett, you have been, one of the most thorough and longest running beta testers for this. It sounds, and I don't want to overstep the bounds here, but it sounds as though you're a bit of a convert to it.
Oh, definitely. As I say, I mean, we've already got jobs coming up next year that we're planning on using it. So, and they're going to be full production jobs. So, that speaks for itself, I think.
Awesome. Well, I guess then all that's left to say is, again, thank you for your time, Jamie and Brett. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions on Omniverse, please don't hesitate to contact the ScanPro Video team.